to Wild and Free Art. Today I'm going to show you how I used a couple cereal boxes, some paper, paint, and glue to make this holder for my papers that I use mostly for my signatures. Let's get started. So I started out with a couple boxes. I got inspired by that giant cornflakes box. It was one of the ones that has 2 packs in it, and it's so perfectly wide. I thought it was just right for what I needed. So I start by measuring exactly the length of my A4 papers that I want to store in it, and I realized that the box wasn't quite wide enough. So I am going to open up the box and expand it, and then we are going to glue it back together again. So I expanded the box by finding the space where the box is already glued together, and I just loosened the glue a bit with my knife to pull the box apart. Okay, so now that I've done it to that box, I'm going to do it to the other box in exactly the same way. Alright, so now that I have both boxes open flat, I'm going to lay them next to each other and double check that my papers fit. So what I'm going to use is the spine of the smaller box attached to the wider part of the cornflakes box, and it fits just right. Alright, so now that I have everything measured, I'm just going to cut off some of the top flaps for one of the boxes, and you'll see that I do that again later. I'm keeping the bottom flaps because I will be using them to attach it to the base. And so as you can see, I've cut down one side, so down the spine of my one box, double checking the size on the spine of the larger box and cutting that in half. So I've basically cut the 2 boxes in half so that I can then glue them back together again in a bigger and better manner. I'm sorry that everything is so close and hard to see, but I didn't have that much space and these boxes were really big. So I've checked the size again with the paper just to make extra sure that it fits. And now I am just double checking everything, measuring and marking so that I can cut the other piece to fit and make sure that the box can be rebuilt properly. Again, here you see I'm cutting the top flaps off of the other box. And trimming down the side of the other one. So now that I have everything more or less cut to pieces, I think it's time to start gluing it together to make a bigger, better box. So I've decided to use some double-sided tape for this. So I run it down my cut end of the cereal box spine, and this is going to basically be attached and overlapped to one of the sides of the other box, and you'll see how I do that in a moment. Okay, so now it's time to attach together. So as you can see, I have my cornflakes box attached to my honey hoops, honey rings box, and I've basically run the 2 spines together and layered them one over the other, and I'm pressing it down to make sure that that double-sided tape adheres properly. Alright, so now I'm testing to see how the other piece will attach, and I've realized that I don't have a hinge for it. There's not enough space for it to attach. So I'm taking a scrap piece of the of the box that I had before, and I'm going to create a hinge. I've decided to take advantage of the natural bend that was in the corner of the box to save me from doing any scoring or anything of the like. And I have created more or less the hinge that I'm going to need to connect the boxes together again. So here you can see I have my hinge ready, and I'm just adding my double-sided tape to it so that I can attach it to the appropriate flap of my box and put it back together. All right, so now I have attached my hinge to the box, taken off another top piece of the other box, and now I'm checking the size of the box to make sure that it's how I want it. So as you can see here, I have basically 1.5 on each side, and then I've connected them together with the different hinges. So now that I know it's the right size, I am about to trim it down before doing the final closure on it. So I know that I want it to slope down to the front a little bit and then have a higher back so that I can fit different size papers inside it. So I'm going to put the taller ones towards the back and of course the smaller ones towards the front. But I want to be able to see the whole thing. So I'm just making a measurement now as to how high I want my front base to be, and then I'm going to draw diagonal lines to connect it, to do the V cut in the sides, and to keep the front part flat. All right, so now I've drawn all my lines out. I'm going to cut them out using a box cutter, just quickly following the lines. And then once that's done, it's time to actually put it together again. Okay, so now that I have finished cutting everything, I've decided to give the box a test and make sure that everything fits nicely the way I want it. And this is when I realized that the bend in the cardboard of the two pieces was making it a bit too floppy and hard for me to put together. So I've decided to make a reinforcement. So after experimenting a little bit, I decided to actually do the reinforcement on the bottom, as running it along the side of the fold was going to, create a lot of extra bulk. So I decided to just run it along the bottom and put it in the two areas where the fold from the original boxes was. All right, so now everything is reinforced. I'm just doing the final trimming of the top, and I am finally taping the two ends together to form the box. So now that the box has been put together, it's time to make the base. So for the base, I used two different pieces of cardboard. I just used the leftover bits of my cereal box to place the box on and do the outside. You see I have all the flaps glued down onto that, but it doesn't look that great. So I got another piece of cardboard from some Amazon packaging this time, and I trimmed it down to size so that it would fit inside the box snugly. And once I got the right cut and size, I glued it in. And I spilled my glue, but I've cut that out. And that's it. That's the base done. So now, as you can see, the outside piece of the base is sticking out because it was just a bit bigger, which, was fine while getting it done. So I'm just trimming off the excess of the other base piece here, and that is the bottom done. Okay, so now everything has been glued in and trimmed appropriately. I decided to do a test paper and everything fits wonderfully. So after having done that, I realized it's still not quite as sturdy as I wanted it to be. So I've decided to add some of my framer's tape around the bottom edge and to reinforce it and strengthen it. So after reinforcing the bottom and sides with tape, I decided to paint a layer of gesso on the shiny part of the box to help the glue adhere better for the next step, which is collaging old book pages to the cardboard to add more strength and some texture. All right, so the next step is to prepare your collage papers. I got this technique from Kerry Griffiths, and I will link his YouTube channel below when he was making a storage thing, and it works amazingly well. The trick about this one, and it is a bit time consuming, but I feel that this method works really well, is to rip up your book pages into squares or rectangles. And you'll see in a while why this is a really good way of doing it, especially for getting those corners nice and, you know, proper at 90 degrees instead of having that bit of bunched up air gap underneath them. So here I am just preparing some more of my book pages for collaging. And I'm just using the width of my ruler. They don't have to be perfect squares or rectangles, just roughly. So yeah, I'm just ripping them up and preparing a stack for sticking on and the next step. All right, so now I have my papers ready. I've started gluing them in. I'm just using my water glue, PVA glue mixture. You can use Mod Podge or anything else. And as you can see here, to get the corners, you just fold it in half and you stick it down and press it down using a even a corner of a paintbrush or a bone folder, whatever you like. And the good thing about Kerry's method here is that if you need to do the corner where you have 3 pieces of paper coming together, you fold your square into 4 and tear just one section of it, overlap the 2 pieces, and then stick it in the corner so you've made a square. I unfortunately don't seem to have recorded a specific moment of me doing that, but if you go to his channel, you will see how he does it directly, and he explains it way better than I can. At a certain point, I decided to continue collaging off camera because it took quite a while. It took about 2 days to finish everything, and I ended up doing it on the floor because I had more room to move around rather than on the desk. So here you can just see I've taken a minute to show you the inside, and you can see what it looks like, and hopefully it gives you an idea of what it looks like on the corner piece as well, how I was mentioning it. All right, so once I finished my collage, I decided to do the painting. I wasn't too special or precious about the inside so much, especially the bottom because it's covered, but I was a lot more careful about the outside. So I used a mixture of peach colors, browns, blacks, grays in the first layer of paint for to get a kind of, I was trying to get like a metal, old style metal effect, you know, galvanized kind of metal effect with paint. So I used a dry brushing technique to help it go on, and it helped keep the streaks and the texture and the layers and stuff like that. And as I did, I always made sure I was picking up paint from different areas so that the paint wouldn't be all consistently the same color. I can tell you this much, I used a lot of paint. Uh, so make sure you've got plenty on hand. After that first layer was done, I decided to do some extra bits to add a bit more to it. So I did some water spritzing, I did some stenciling with some golds, I did some splattering, a bit of sanding, and that way I kind of gave it quite a bit of a better texture, and then I set it to dry. All right, so knowing that I wanted a handle on my storage box, I decided to make a monkey fist knot. Here is a small example, but because I need it to be quite big, I decided to use a thicker cord. I have some sisal here that I use sometimes for making baskets and in my macrame. So you're going to need some good size pieces, about 3 times the length of your forearm. And you can see I'm just trimming that there. And just to stop the ends from fraying, I put on a little bit of washi tape because this cord in particular does like to fray at the ends. All right, so once you've put your tape on, you're going to want to wrap the cord around your fist 3 times. You want to leave a tail on the other side, and you want to open your fingers into a V and run the string through in between, again, 3 times. So you can see here, I'm just pulling it through 3 times. So 3 is the magic number with this type of knot. Once you've managed to do the 3 times, you change the position of your hand by holding it on one of the loops, and then you're going to put the tail end, so the longest part that's left, through the loop, and back out the other loop, and pull slightly but not too much, and again, and you're going to do it another 2 times for a total of, you guessed it, 3 times. So once you've pulled your third loop, you see how it's supposed to look. You've got your tail, you've got your long end, and as you can see, now all you have to do to tighten it is basically follow the original cord and start pulling. So this part can be a bit tricky, and you might have to do it a couple times, but you know, more or less, it's a fairly simple process, really. So as you can see here, I'm just following the same cord, and I am slowly pulling it and tightening it. And as I pull on one end, you see the other piece comes out, and I can pull that, and then I push that through, and I'm basically following the same thing I've done over and over again until I reach the end. And then if I have to, I do it again until I reach a good tight knot. And once you've pulled everything tight, you should have a knot that looks like this. The next thing I wanted to do to put inside my storage box was to get some folders. and cut them to size so that they can fit in there so I can separate my papers. I just used some hanging folders that I had got at a secondhand shop on my trip to Canada over last summer. And I got them and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with them. So I'm just cutting them down to size here, making sure they fit, and putting a little tab on them so that I can see the different kinds of papers and whatnot that you want. This part is totally, optional. It's up to you to do it. I just decided to do that because it works for me. So now, after 3 days of work, we are finally ready to complete and put the finishing touches on our box. So here I want to add my pull to the side because that's how it's going to go on my shelf. You can put your pull wherever you want. I've measured the width of my knot, and now I'm just cutting 2 holes into my box. I've made some cut X's. And I'm just going to push the 2 threads through. They still have the washi tape on them to help push them through, although I did have a little bit of trouble. So I had to get creative on how to get those cords through the holes. But I did get there in the end. So now I've managed to get one in, and I'm just pulling it through to the end, and then I'm going to repeat the process for the other string. I'm sorry I'm out of frame here, but yeah, as I said, big box, small space. So once I've pulled both parts in, I am just tying them off inside. As you can see, I have unraveled the threads so that I can make a smaller knot and a little bit more sturdy. So I've just done some double knots, and now I'm just cutting off the excess bits. And that's it. My pull has been attached. And now it's time to add in my papers. And that's it. And with my file folders to hold space there, and my little tabs. And that is the end of my storage box. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and it's inspired you to reuse your cereal boxes to make some fun storage for any of your papers and bits and bobs.
Yeah!
Let me know what you think in the comments, and do please like and subscribe if you have found this content useful.